Now, President Trump is getting dunked on during his feud with former communications director Anthony Scaramucci. Now, Scaramucci, of course, is a former staffer that lasted about 11 days in the administration. Apparently, he was that bad. So now, Scaramucci is now in the process of reforming himself. Maybe he's got a book deal coming up, or wants to get a book deal, or maybe he wants to be on CNN or MSNBC, trying to cash in on being an anti Trump Republican, which apparently makes a lot of money. So, because of that, and because he's now anti Trump, he's become a darling of the media, despite the fact, of course, that he and a lot of Republicans who are also anti Trump, Joe Walsh is one big example of that, they still support the same policies as President Trump. And yet, they say, no, we're superior because we're not as openly mean. I mean, we think all the Trump's policies are fantastic, tax cuts for the rich, building a wall. Even Joe Walsh is like, yeah, build a wall, build a wall. No, dude, you're the same as Donald Trump. You're just in a prettier wrapper. That's what that is. Now, Trump is, of course, angry at this massive betrayal by the mooch, and he will not let this go unanswered, and he actually goes after him in the usual Trump fashion. Uh, on Twitter, he said this: "Nobody ever heard of this dope until he met me. He only lasted 11 days. Dope, dope, calling a dope a dope. Okay, anyway, there's a game of rope-a-dope going on here, isn't there? I don't know. Uh, so look, that's the usual thing that you've heard. We've heard this before, right? Every time Trump fires somebody or gets mad at somebody who used to work for him, he says the same thing. I never knew the guy. I barely knew him. Talked to him once. You know, not a good guy. Disaster. Well, in this one, it's kind of hard to do that, even though he still does, as you saw, he still says that. But everyone who has a brain thinks, wait a minute, he was your communications director. It's not as if he was the intern who brought you coffee and donuts, right? Or in this case, cheeseburgers and Diet Coke. He was your communications director. You looked at this guy and you said, no, that's going to be my communications guy. He's going to be in charge of our department and what the message that we put out. That's a big job. If he's such a dope, then why the hell did you hire him? I surround myself the best people. The best people. No, you know why? It's because Scaramucci did the one thing that was required. He kissed Trump's ass. And he was good at it. And so now that he's no longer in the administration, no longer has a job in the administration, and by the way, no longer has any prospects for getting a job since working for Trump is so incredibly toxic. Now, just now, he decides to start talking about how utterly incompetent the president is. And for doing so, the internet piled on. Actually, they piled on to Donald Trump. First, for, of course, going after Scaramucci. Now, I'm going to pile on to Scaramucci afterwards, after we're done with Trump. And let's start with Jody Moss, right? So she said, I remember when you said you knew him well, that he's a great guy and good friend. Now, suddenly you say you barely knew him and never really liked him much. The obvious Trump deflection, right? I remember when you said I only picked the best. Yet, how many of your picks have you thrown out and berated? By my count, so far, and I might be off a couple, I'm around 36. 36 former staffers either fired or resigned. There's better turnover numbers in fast food. Just saying. Toxic workplace. There's more. Robin Wilcox said you hired him, and he at least sounds like he knows what he's doing, and can't say the same for you. Yeah. Well, that's because Donald Trump's having a mental breakdown, or he's mentally incompetent. I'm just saying, 25th Amendment, right? Dr. Jack Brown said, imagine a president so emotionally insecure that he feels the need to bully a former staff member. It's a script from a dystopian film. Again, correct. And another case for the 25th Amendment. The president is literally unstable. Such a super, super thin skin. And he lashes out instead of actually doing what was supposed to be his job. Brooklyn Dad Defiant said, still ranting about a guy that you hired, a guy that only lasted 11 days. What does that say about you? Another good, excellent question. I don't know, I can speculate. But let's continue with the tweet here. Said, at least he didn't end up in jail like so many of the other winners. Oh, you mean like Michael Flynn? Oh, you mean like Papadopoulos? Or Michael Cohen? Never knew those guys. Barely talked to them. Right. Okay. Jay Relling says, why are you so bad at hiring people? Morton Overby also said this, never heard of the dope, the highly unstable nut job, the crazy incompetent fool, mental wreck. Made him White House Director of Communications. Only the best. Only the best. Okay, so as fun as this is, right? This is also disastrous. Because remember, we need a functional government. This is a guy that's in charge of the government. This constant turnover and instability is really bad for the government long term. You thought it was dysfunctional before. No, it's worse. It's even worse. Another thing to consider, too, is that these people like look, there are people like Scaramucci, right? These people like him, they deserve to get dunked on, too. Because, again, they're not innocent. And unfortunately, the media is really failing to do that. Look, Scaramucci wanted to work for Trump. That's I mean, that's it right there. He made the choice to work for a president that is in obvious mental decline. Trump's been this way for a long time, right? Once you study who Donald Trump is and you go through and you see the things that he said within the last 10 years, within the last, or in things that he's done within the last 15 years, right? And even longer, you realize and you come to the conclusion that he is not very smart. He is not a very stable genius. He's never been. Now, again, he's never been very smart, as I mentioned. But now, as of late, he's been in mental decline. And so you take somebody who was already not smart to begin with, and you add mental instability into that, but you get to be at a problematic situation, right? So now what makes Scaramucci terrible is that only people who covet power are drawn to someone like that. Someone who's already stupid, easily manipulate, you can easily manipulate them, or you think that you can easily manipulate them, I guess in this case, and are in mental decline, right? I do not want to make it seem like Donald Trump's a victim, right? No, he's not. He's an idiot. He's an old school racist. He's a bully, misogynistic. He's always been that way. It's just now he's mentally wrong, right? Mentally off. But the people around him, as I said before, they're terrible people because they're essentially vultures. They are drawn to his stench of corruption. And what's funny is that afterwards, all of them swear that, no, you guys don't understand. I never actually stood for that stuff. I was the adult in the room. I was trying to stop Donald Trump from his worst impulses. It wasn't us that were the bad people. No, we were trying to restrain him. We were doing good. Every one of them. Writing books, cashing in, going on CNN, MSNBC, and Scaramucci is just the latest one to do that. But make no mistake, there are no good people who choose to work in this administration. None. They're all terrible. And everyone that's left, by the way, and look, I can guarantee at some point, Kellyanne Conway, probably after Donald Trump loses, but maybe before, who knows, when the ship really starts going down and when defeat is obvious, Kellyanne Conway and people like her, they're going to make a break. And they're going to say, wasn't us. No, we were the adults in the room. Maybe I wrote the op-ed. Who knows who wrote the op-ed, right? And they're going to say, in a book where they make money or in a TV appearance, we were the lone wall against Donald Trump. We're the ones that kept him from doing the worst. Guaranteed, it's absolutely going to happen. And that's how this game is played. Suck up to Trump, get into his orbit, then get unceremoniously fired, and you still get a paid gig as a contributor or your own TV show or your own book deal. That's how these people get into power. That's how they ride their way into fame and fortune. And we got to shut them down, and we got to call them out. We got to tell people who they really are. So, Scaramucci, I'm not buying this. Oh, I'm a better person. It turns out I was wrong, and I'm turning over a new leaf. You haven't turned anything over except, a few dollar bills. And unfortunately, they're all like that. Hey guys, hopefully you enjoyed that free video. Now I'm going to have to ask you a favor. Between the demonetization and the YouTube algorithm messing around with view counts, etc., we're having a hard time adjusting to the new YouTube reality, which is where you guys come in. See, we have a Patreon, patreon.com/TYTNation, set up to help us rely on you guys, the viewers, instead of big corporate ads. Look, you know the show. You know how I'm not in favor of big corporations anyway. So help us transition away from relying on the ad model to pay the bills and sign up to be a patron, patreon.com/TYTNation. That goes a long way to help us keep the lights on. And you guys will know that you're supporting independent progressive media.